Okay, so I've been meaning to make this video for a while. Basically, it's going to be my testimony, my story. This might offend some people. It's not the point of it, obviously. But yeah, I haven't wrote anything down. It's going to be straight from the heart. So sorry if I get a bit jumbled. Okay, so basically, my name's Adam. I'm 23, nearly 24. Grew up in Australia. Didn't have the best childhood, I guess you would say. Most accredited to my dad. Basically, when I was growing up, I never really got hit, abused physically, a couple of times, but nothing too crazy. But he was very possessive, I guess you would say. Very, just not the right role model you would want as a father. And anyway, we're living in Victoria at the time, and I had a fair few incidents with him. Like one time after my parents had already been divorced, I found like a big knife under his bed when I was like 6, and that stirred me up. When I was 8, I think it was, we were living in Victoria and he kidnapped. There was like a play day. We hadn't seen him in ages because he'd been in and out of jail, and we set up this play day with my older brother and my younger sister, so it was 3 of us. We went to this park and we thought it was all good. Like there was no one from the court there, which was kind of weird, especially on the first play day. And then he ended up kidnapping us and flying us over to Perth for a week. And we lived in this like motel that was crummy as, and we were like hardly any food. And I remember there was this wasp nest at the pool at the motel, so we couldn't go swimming. But I don't know, I just didn't understand it all when I was that old. I think my brother, who's 4 years older than me, understood it a bit better than me. But anyway, I ended up flying back to Perth, into Melbourne, and getting the cops involved. We went to jail. And then things kind of cooled down for a bit after that. There was more things that happened in there, but that was one of the main things that stuck out to me. And things kind of calmed down for a bit, and anyway, it was about 2 years later or so, I say. We're living in Perth now. We moved over here for my little brother and sister. Mum had twins, and yeah, so basically we were living here, and I hadn't seen him in ages, but he really wanted to see me in kind of my footy game. So I was like, okay, you can come to my footy game on a Saturday. We hung out afterwards and hung out at his house, and I was about 10 then, I think 2007, so yeah, around 10 years old. And I don't know, it was fine. It's your dad, you know what I mean? You want to hang out with your dad, you want to be cool with your dad, and yeah, I didn't really understand. I mean, although I knew he was bad growing up, I didn't really understand just how bad, I guess. So we hung out, and he wanted me to stay that night, but I couldn't because I hadn't seen him in so long. My mum was smart to be like, no, you know what I mean? Like, you can't just sleep at your dad's house after not seeing him for over a year. Anyway, that was Saturday. Didn't hear from him at all the next day or anything like that, even though he said he'd call. And then Tuesday night, my mum comes in, I think, to my room and says, you know, your dad's been arrested. He's murdered his ex-wife, broke into a house at night. I read this later, broke into a house at night, strangled her to death, and just real horrible stuff. A woman who was, I didn't know, but a woman, a mother of 5. And that happened all in Port Kennedy, which people that know me know that, you know, I went to school in the suburb next to it all my life, pretty much, from primary school, from about year 4 onwards to the end of high school. And I actually lived in Port Kennedy for about 2 years. So it was definitely close to home, I guess you'd say, because he was actually living in the suburb next to me when all this happened. He moved down there to be close to us, and I don't know. Anyway, so that kind of messed with me for a bit, but I don't know, I guess I didn't allow it to mess with me in the sense that I was just lying to myself, and I was just like, I don't know, like I didn't really want to talk about it, but at the same time I was pretty open to talking about it. More open than my brother and sister, I guess. That's what I don't know, that's what I thought anyway, and I don't know, I never really faced the repercussions of that. I guess what I realized is in my late, like, teenage years, like 15 to 18 especially, I would get really angry. So I would always be really, I don't know, like really furious for no reason at all. I remember when I was dating this girl, and it was just directions. I would be in the car and I'd be driving. I'd get frustrated or something because I'm driving the city or whatever, and she'd stuff up the directions or something so simple, and I would just get mad. I would just yell at her, and like profusely. I never physically hurt her or anything like that, but I don't know. I just get so mad. I didn't realize why. Like it doesn't even matter. You know what I mean? It's directions. It's like I had this thing ingrained in my head that, just to be angry all the time. And I don't know. So anyway, I move on from there, and this whole time I've been anti-drugs. I've been against drugs my whole life because I grew up playing footy, Australian footy, and yeah, I don't know, I just loved staying active and wasn't the fittest of people. I wasn't like a fitness freak, but I don't know, I just never agreed with drugs. I did alcohol here and there, but nothing too crazy. Maybe it got a bit more crazy when you turn 18 and 19, and 17 even, you get into that party scene. But yeah, when I was 20, I had, in the space of like 4 or 5 days, I had like a lot of bad things happen. So I was dating this other girl, and anyway, all in the space of a week, I had my birthday, and I was like, sweet. And then things weren't working out with my mum and me, so I was a hard kid. So basically, she kicked me out. It was planned and everything, but I really wasn't ready. I didn't feel like I was ready to move out because I was fighting all this stuff that I was hiding. And yeah, so I moved out into this place that I found that looked really good, and there wasn't anyone else living there. I was looking after this house for this woman that lived far away. And anyway, so I moved out, had my birthday, moved out, and then my girlfriend broke up with me like 2 days later. So I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of bad. And then I got fired from my job like the next day or something. So I was sitting at this place thinking my family doesn't want me, my girlfriend doesn't want me, didn't have a job, like no one wants to employ me. I didn't really have any friends from school because I didn't really fit in. I had one really good friend, and anyway, he would smoke weed, like that was kind of what he did. And I would always say no. He was never forceful about it or anything. He'd just smoke it and hang out and stuff. And but anyway, he was like, "Do you want to?" I was at his house hanging out with him because I didn't really have anyone else, And plus, I liked his company. He's a great dude. And yeah, he said, "Do you want to smoke some weed?" I was like, "Okay." Like, what else is going for me? You know what I mean? I might as well, right? So I was like, "Okay." Smoked some weed, and obviously I enjoyed it because anyone that smoked weed for the first time, 99% of the time, you're gonna like it, right? Especially when you're with your boy, and you got nothing else going for you. It takes you out of this bliss, or it brings bliss. It takes you out of this hole that life can be. So anyway, started smoking, and I was only smoking like not very regularly, like every 2 weeks or something I'd do it, and then it increased from there, and I had on and off from there. Anyway, I don't know, it went up till last year when I was trying to get an apprenticeship and I just couldn't get one after mine falling through, and I just didn't know what I was doing. So I saved up, working at Aldi, working at the supermarket, and saved up to move to Canada, work in a ski resort, because I was like, nothing else is really working for me, so I might as well. And basically I was living on a ski resort, snowboarding, met a lot of cool people, very party lifestyle though. So I tried a couple of drugs before I got there, like weed and MD, and I think I've done cocaine a couple of times and meth a couple of times. But when I went to Canada, it sort of was even more like, did shrooms again, fair bit, acid, ketamine, and all these other drugs, cocaine, all this other stuff again. Because I don't know if anyone's aware, but if you go into a ski resort, that stuff is everywhere. It's so easy to get, and you kind of feel pushed into that lifestyle because everyone else is doing it. Unless you're in like a couple there, couples can kind of get away from it. I found if you're not in a couple, you're kind of forced to be in that lifestyle because you're not really going to be hanging out with anyone. And I saw people that didn't want to do it and the way they got neglected. And then I saw people that did do it and the way they got addicted. So, especially with cocaine, it's a huge problem. Anyway, I was working there and I was living there and I was as far from God as I think most people can be. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't a murderer or anything like that, but I didn't want to hear it. So, another thing is my family, my mom has been Christian on and off pretty much all her life. And we've had a lot of troubles, obviously, from what I've said, and there's so much more I'm not going to go into, but yeah, we've had our troubles. And I don't know, I remember when I went to church when I was younger, I never believed it. I never actually sat in the sermons or sat in the child nursery school, I don't know, whatever you call it, Sunday school. I never sat there and like actually believed that this is it. Like, I don't know, like, you know, you hear all these stories about Jesus and you know, like David and Goliath and, I don't know, the ones that I remember, Jonah and the big whale, and I heard these things and I was like, I didn't even know why I was there. I didn't even know why I was listening. I was like, what is this? Like, I just thought it was garbage. I didn't know what to believe. Like, I didn't have any miracle where God showed himself and was like, I'm real and I can back on that for the rest of my life or anything like that. I didn't understand it. And as soon as I didn't have to go, when I was like 12, I don't know the exact age, but it was pretty young. As soon as I didn't have to go, I was the first in the family to be like, I don't want to go at all. So I just stay at home Sundays by myself, which was chill, and I just didn't want anything to do with it. And then when it grew up, throughout my whole teen life, up to 20, up until even recently, I didn't even want to hear God or Jesus at all. I didn't want to hear a worship song. I just thought it was dumb, you know? Like, I just, like, I was just anti as much as you can be, you know? And I guess that kind of trips my family out now from where I am now, because, like, people that have only just met me might think that I've been, you know, loving Jesus my whole life, you know, and understanding the gospel and everything like that. But I didn't. I grew up not understanding it at all and having so many false claims because I saw how hypocritical a lot of people in the church were, especially like the pastors and things like that, which is something I never really understood. I saw that these people that were preaching this stuff, you know, love your neighbor and this and the important teachings that, you know, I'm understanding now, they were preaching this stuff and they were just hypocrites. They didn't really care. Like, you know, when you speak to someone and you're like, they're saying all this stuff, but they don't actually care. Like, for example, us as humans, we're not idiots. You know, we can tell when someone genuinely cares and when someone doesn't. We can tell when someone's being real and when someone's being fake. And I could just tell that these people weren't real. You know, I don't know how else to explain it than that, but it just didn't feel right to me. So, like, honestly, that pushed me further away from God, from Christ, than anything else. Like, you can say all this other, like, you know, satanic, you know, and people like that pushed. No, it was the church. It was actually the church that pushed me away than anything else. And I know a lot of people aren't even going to understand that. And, like, I understand it now because it's religion. You know what I mean? Religion is the problem. And people are like, that doesn't make any sense, which I didn't used to understand. You know, and now I'm really understanding that religion is basically like people, it's something like a museum for good people. Like, people come to church and they, you know, you put on your smiley face and you parade around how good you are and you make other people feel bad in the process, you know? Maybe not intentionally, but you do, because people know that you're not really being real. Like, life is hard and it's constant challenges, you know, and no one is perfect. Literally no one. And yet these people are saying, I do this, and they're parading around as being perfect, and it just turns you away because you're like, this is so fake. Like, surely this isn't what it's about. And I don't know, how can I buy into that? Because I just didn't see it as being real. When really, like, what Jesus stood for and what it says in the Bible, if you actually read the Bible, which I never have, is it talks about how, like, there were people back then, the Pharisees, that were like this. And he calls them hypocrites and says, you stand for one thing, but do another. And he tells people, listen to their teachings, but don't do as they do. You know, because they say the right words and they say all the right things, but they don't actually live by those teachings. It's like they just want to be glorified in the eyes of other people and be put above people. And I don't know. That's one thing I didn't understand, whereas Jesus and the church should be a hospital for the broken. You should go there when everything's crumbling around, for people to just hug you and just show compassionate love and no judgment when you really, really need it. Like, and that's the thing I found with people, is they're always around, like, not everyone, but most people, especially in this day and age, is people are around for the good times. And you can find as many people as you want around for the good times. But when times get hard, no one wants to be around you because it doesn't benefit them. And like, I found myself capable of doing that a million times. Don't think that I'm sitting here being like, I'm perfect, because there is no way that I'm perfect. I've done that a million times, and it's constant discipline. Anyway, I'm getting off track with that. So that's sort of my Christianity upbringing. Anyway, so take it to March this year, right? So obviously everyone knows COVID hit and things like that. I think we shut down on March 17th. And for the first 2 or 3 weeks, people were still hanging around. Everyone was planning to go back to Australia or move on. Like 90% of people, 80% of people left. And we're still partying for a little bit. And then when everyone left, I was smoking weed every day. By the way, when I was in Canada, like every single day, it's legal, it's high quality. I thought this was awesome. And I didn't realize how much toll it was taking on my body. And when everyone left, I still started smoking weed. I was smoking weed every day. And I don't know, after for the first week or two, I was watching the death count, watching the infection rate, and I was, putting fear into your mind pretty much, and seeing there's this many people died today and this many people got infected and the numbers were increasing. I was like, where is this going? Constantly looking at the death toll. But then things just didn't start adding up to me. After a week or two, I was like, I don't know, just there were certain questions I had that I couldn't find answers for. So a few years prior, I lost 20, 25 kilos. I was pretty overweight, and I just went on a journey it took me 18 months to do it slowly, build up my fitness. And I didn't do it through diets or anything like that, because I was like, this is dumb, I want this to be a lifestyle change. I don't want to be forced eating salads or whatever that garbage they push. I wanted to actually be healthy. And I saw these people eating good food, and I wanted to learn how to cook. And I wanted to learn how the body worked. So I was researching into the immune system and all that sort of stuff. And basically, I just realized that a lot of this COVID stuff, it doesn't actually make sense. You know what I mean? For example, they talk about the flu shot being the best thing for you and to stop the flu, but I haven't gotten sick in years, And the secret isn't the flu shot, or isn't vaccines. For me, it's, well, for anyone really, that's another story. But, I just eat a lot of garlic. And you got turmeric, and you got these foods that are good for the immune system. And a lot of people don't realize this stuff. I read a lot of books on health and holistic health, and how it's natural health, and how, I don't know, I just realized that these people that were, these doctors and stuff that were talking about COVID, no one was mentioning the immune system. No one. They're all talking about, stay inside and stop the spread and all this sort of stuff. And then the masks came out, and it just really annoyed me, because I was like, these masks aren't going to do anything. Have you not seen infectious disease before, and how the suits they have to wear, and I think a little bit of cloth, and I don't know. So that was where I started with all this, because I was like, this just doesn't make sense to me. So I started researching into that, and I realized that it's not what it is. And I don't know. I just realized that if the government's lying about something so simple as this, what else have I taken as truth that isn't truth? You know what I mean? I've always heard the term truth is stranger than fiction, but I don't know, I never really understood it. It's just a cool saying, but anyway, so I started looking down the conspiracy theory route. That's where I got started, and I was just reading non-stop to do with all these conspiracy theories, like 5G and coronavirus and weather manipulation and the pedophilia and all this sort of stuff. And when I say conspiracy theories, I'm not saying they're not true, because the thing I found is that most of them are true. Most of them actually do happen, have happened, or are still happening. And and that was when I went on this tangent on my Facebook, and I was just yo guys, how do you not see this? This is all fake, this isn't real, and I was just calling these people out, and everyone, as you can imagine, everyone's just what are you doing, man? Shush, you're weird, you've cooked yourself with drugs, you're done, and I'm just like, no, like, how do you not, I couldn't understand how people didn't see this as well. Like, I couldn't understand how, I don't know, I don't want to call people brainwashed, but like, I can say I was. So I didn't understand how people were so ingrained in this system that is constantly lying to them, and yeah. Anyway, while I was reading into that, my friend got me onto Q, which I know a lot of people would have heard about Q. It's been around since like 2017. Seems all good, seems godly. I'll get into that later. But also on the side is I was researching back into history, because I was just sick of not knowing what's going on, you know? So I started reading back into history 2,000 years ago, and keep in mind, I'm reading like 10 hours a day, minimum. You know, reading a lot. I'll just be playing Rocket League and just have documentaries and just constantly feeding into my ear just knowledge, or I'd actually physically read. The thing is, I was actually struggling to physically read stuff because of my weed addiction, because my attention span had just gone to garbage, so I couldn't, you know, I'd read a sentence and not even take anything in. Like, I'm fortunate that's changed now since I've been off weed for 2 months, but back then I couldn't. So I was just watching all these videos and taking all this information in, and the first thing I had to do was I had to disprove what I kind of thought was real anyway. Like, for example, with evolution and with the Big Bang and stuff and dinosaurs, and the way people can just predict that the Earth is 4.6 billion years old, and, you know, and they can predict that explosions destroy everything, but this one explosion created 98% of the matter, and I don't know, there was all this stuff that never really sat right with me, because it's these guys saying that they're so much smarter than me that I can't even comprehend how they come to it. But it's like, can you at least explain your working out? And I don't know. It just never really sat right with me. So I had to look into that. That took a while, and I don't know, I just realized that evolution just makes no sense. It's just dumb. And also with the Big Bang and all that sort of stuff. And then I started just things just started piecing together. It took a while. It wasn't like I watched one video and I was like, man, that's awesome. You know, that's what I'm going to believe. It was like, no, because like, for all I know, they're lying as well. Like, I've been lied to about so many other things that how am I to watch one video even about conspiracy theories or flat earth or anything? Like, how am I supposed to watch one thing and be like, that's the truth? Like, you know, like, because there's all this other information. You know, it's easier to tell a lie than it is to disprove a lie that you've been told and you already believe. So it was a battle. Anyway, so I was reading back into all this stuff, and I started looking into different religions, because at the moment I'm an atheist. I've been an atheist all my life. I mean, or more so probably an atheist, because I was like, you know, like, if God's real, like, why do so many bad things happen? And the general questions that people ask. But yeah, I was looking back into that, looked back into like Islam, Catholic, Christianity, of course. That was a big thing I had to look into, more so to disprove it than anything. Because like, the first thing, I'm still a very prideful person, like everyone is, you know, and in order for me to accept Christianity as the way, and accept Jesus, I had to admit that I've been wrong for so many years. You know what I mean? And admit how dumb I was to not take any of this stuff in. And I looked into Islam and just realized it was sorry, but there's so many contradictions with it. Same with the Catholics, and this New Age stuff. There's a lot of things that fall into piece with it, you know. But main one being like Buddhism and the chakras aligning, and we're our own saviors. You know, the third eye is our pineal gland, and there's just so much that I'm not going to touch too much into at the moment. But yeah, I just started realizing that what I never realized was Jesus was actually like a real person. Like, and there's so much documented evidence for that. There's more evidence outside of the Bible, outside of the gospel, than there is inside of it from other texts, which I never realized. And there's so much evidence to show that he resurrected, he actually came back to life from the dead. Because that's the main point of the Christian argument. I never understood. That's like where it starts and falls. If that's not the case, then there's no point towards it. Because if he didn't rise from the dead, then it takes away the point of him actually dying for us, for our sins, you know, and how we can be forgiven. So I'll say I'm going to touch too much into. But anyway, when I started reading into all this stuff, like first few weeks, I was still like, like I'm not sure. This seems a bit. It took me ages to actually come to a conclusion with it all. But I remember that I was living at this hostel, and I've only been reading about a month into this, maybe like 3 or 4 weeks, and I still wasn't sure with it all. But I remember I was living at this hostel. I didn't have anyone in my room, and it just makes me laugh because God has such a sense of humor. He checked, like this pretty girl checked into my into the hostel, and she was downstairs, and I saw her for like a minute or whatever, and of course, I went and said hey to her. I didn't want to say hey to anyone at the moment because I just lost all my friends. They'd all left, and I was living at a hostel, not talking to anyone. You know, the only people I could talk to was online, and it's just not the same. So I was feeling pretty lonely and all that, and said hey to this pretty girl, and then she got busy talking to the reception, so I was like, oh, I'll just leave her be. And then she checked into my room. Out of all the rooms she could have checked into, she checked into mine. I don't know, we got talking, and, you know, we got along, and it was already late. It was like 10 p.m. at night, and she was saying that, you know, you can eat the kiwi fruit with the skin on. Weird conversations, and I was like, no, you can't. There's no way, like, ew. And she's like, no, you can. So I was like, all right, let's do it. Let's drive. So I got in my car. We drove like 20 minutes to the next town along because that was the only shop that was open. Bought some kiwi fruits just to get them, just to try it. And anyway, we're in the car, and like 10, 15 minutes into the drive, you know, we're just chatting about random stuff, and she tells me that she's a Christian. And it's like I'm trapped in this car. Like, I don't want to hear anything about Christianity still, even though I'm looking into all this stuff. I'm still at a point where I'm like, I don't want to hear this stuff. Anyway, I'm trapped in this car, and I'm trying to be polite because, one, you know, she's really pretty. Me being being me, being a classic male. But also I wanted to be polite, you know, because she's been polite to me. So I know she's telling me basic thing, that this and this, and I just basically said that what she believes, and I was saying, I don't know what I believe. Like, I don't know, I'm not sitting with it. And she didn't push anything like that on me. She's like, that's fine. Like, you know, and I don't know, I haven't really met many people that actually stood by Jesus and by God and would accept and not wanting to cram it down your throat. You know what I mean? And I realize how much that doesn't work now, and it's not the point of it, you know, but like I never had really seen that, and I don't know, that kind of got me twisted, and I've always thought about that. And the funny thing is, we're still good friends now. She lives on the other side of on the world, but she tells me her story about how she checked into my thing, because I thought it was weird enough that she checked into my room, like he was planting a seed there. But then when I talked to her, she was like 2 hours away, and she was trying to get a hostel somewhere to stay up there, and she was like, oh, she couldn't. So then she was trying to call a place 20 minutes away from me to try and get like a hostel to stay in. She looked online, and it was all, they had available bookings, and she was trying to book online, but she couldn't do it. It wasn't working, wasn't accepting her card details or whatever. And then so she called them up and was like, oh, can I check in to this place? And they were like, oh yeah, sure, like you just have to do it online, I can't do it on the phone. So she tried to do it again online, it wasn't working. She was like, oh, I give up. So she's like, I'll find somewhere in Banff, which is where I was staying. And she's like, oh, I'll just check, I don't know, this hostel came up, the one that there's heaps of hostels, and this one came up she was staying at, that I was staying at. So she checked in there, and then somehow we spoke in the lobby, and then she got put in my room. And I don't know, people will put that down to luck and all that sort of stuff, and I don't know, take it as you will. Anyway, so I was reading into all this stuff still, and I was still looking into Q, and that was half of my study, at least. I wasn't even looking into the Bible at this point, but I was still reading into history. I was starting to make the connections between all the way back to like the Tower of Babel with Nimrod and Jezebel, and like then I was connecting that with like all the names they use now, like Ishtar and, you know, Baal and Moloch, and just, you know, connecting all the names that they all mean the same people, but they're just under different names. And things just started to connect. I guess that's the best way I can put it, you know? But I was also looking a lot into Q, you know, and I was looking into how they're like, you know, we're the saviors of mankind, and they were starting to expose these people, and they were posting videos about all this pedophilia that's going on. Like I watched all these documentaries like Out of Shadows, Plandemic, you know, above Majestic, there's heaps, you know what I mean? But I started to realize that this pedophilia is real. Like, it's a real problem. And I started to realize how they're normalizing pedophilia, how they started with normalizing gays and gay marriage, and then it went on to transgenderism, and then pedophilia, and I started to realize how they're doing it and all this sort of stuff. And I don't know, because I always sat on an outside view of like, whatever, you can do whatever you want as long as it doesn't affect me. Like, same with gays. I have nothing against people being gay or gay marriage or anything, as long as you don't bring it to me. That was always my standpoint. And then I just started, I don't know, when I started to really, after like, I'd say probably late April or May, probably better, I actually started to realize that Jesus is real, and that this Bible is real, and that there's so many things that have happened in this Bible that have come true already. And I started reading these words. I didn't really pick up a Bible until like May. I started reading John. And I started to realize that, wow, this is speaking to me. Like, there's a lot of things in here that I need to hear. Like, that I know I'm struggling. I've been struggling for all my life to find what is the point of life. What do I do? Where do I go? Why do I keep falling back into bad habits? And heaps of questions that I had to answer that I could never answer. And then like things went on for that, and I was still looking into Q. And then around late May, early June, I started to see contradictions with Q and how they would contradict themselves, and they would say they're godly, but they weren't actually standing for what I was actually reading in the Bible. And and what I was looking back into history and the things that they were just contradicting themselves. And I was just like, I started to realize that, Satan portrays himself as the angel. He disguises himself as the angel of light. You know what I mean? In 2 Corinthians 11, it talks about it. And how, these people, they're saying they're godly. They're saying they're standing for good and all that, but they're not living by their own example. And it just reminded me back to my childhood as well, with and Jesus with the Pharisees, and how, they're saying one thing, but they're doing another, and it's the easiest way to fool someone. Also, with all that, I started to see that these Q people were also pushing the New Age beliefs of expanding the consciousness, which ties into the chakras, and it ties into all of that stuff. Like, it's bad. Prison planet, matrix system, all this sort of stuff that most people are starting to believe. And that's what I'm saying with all this, the pandemic video, especially the second one. You spit all these truths, you spit like 99 truths to tell one lie. Because why not? Like if you're watching, you have no idea about any of this stuff from the past and what's true and what's not. And you see all this stuff and you start to see all this stuff making sense, and it makes true, but it's true. And then you spit in one line there. How are you supposed to discern that lie if you don't know if you're coming from a point of not knowing anything? And that's really what I'm starting to see. Like, I don't want to give him any credit, but I'm starting to see how clever Satan is, how his intellect is beyond human comprehension. So at the start of June, I saw something that just, I don't know, it just snapped me. I was like, I need to get out of here. I need to go back home. So I'm still living in Banff at this point, and I booked my flight straight out. I was like, no, I got to get out of here. But I had to book it for 3.5 weeks in advance because of COVID, and there was just, I don't know, flights are impossible. And there was some stuff happened with that, and my first flight got cancelled. I have to get another one. Total hassle. And then, anyway, I got to Sydney, I booked a flight from Banff, Canada, Calgary to Perth. But when I got to Sydney, they didn't tell me beforehand, but I had to quarantine in Sydney. So straight off the plane, I was supposed to be getting another plane to Perth, but they didn't let me. I had to get straight on a bus, got put in a hotel. Anyway, when I was downstairs at the hotel, I didn't want to give them any of my information, my credit card information, because I only had a Canadian card, and also I didn't want them having my bank details because, I didn't believe any of the stuff was real. And I remember, but I needed a SIM card. because I had to make calls. So the person at the desk was like, I can give you a $2 SIM card. I'll charge it to your room. I was like, yeah, sure. Like, that's fair. So I grabbed the $2 SIM card, whatever. And then when I go back to my room, I had this bag, this Kathmandu backpack that I found in Canada in the free room that had been in Canada for at least 6 months. It looked like it'd been more, like probably a lot more, because I found it 6 months ago or whatever. And I'd been through this bag a million times. Like, when you own a bag and you go through it, and especially when you're about to pack for a plane, you empty it out completely, you make sure nothing's in there, and then you start to pack your things and you make sure it's all organized. Anyway, when I get back to my room, I get to the bottom of my bag and there's a $2 coin sitting in there, an Australian $2 coin. And that just tripped me out. Like, this bag hasn't even been in the country for at least 6 months. And there's an Australian $2 coin in there. And that just, I don't know. It bugged me because I know for a fact that, and I started doubting myself. I was like, no, maybe I didn't check it right. But when I really think about it, I'm like, no, like I'm 100% sure that there was nothing in that bag. How did that $2 coin get in there? And then when I left the hotel after 2 weeks, I just gave them the $2 coin. I thought, yep, sweet, all done. But for me, that was just like, I don't know. Another thing that, like I said, I was addicted to weed. When I left Canada, like a week before, I just stopped having the desire for it. I was praying about it and I was like, please help me with this, because I realized how much it started to affect me. My attention span went to nothing. People say they need it to sleep, and I was saying the same thing, but it's because when I wasn't on it, I became this wiry person that can't sit down, and I'm always doing one thing or the other, and I couldn't even read a sentence in a book. I just couldn't chill without it. And I started realizing how it was affecting me. So I was praying about that, and I just stopped getting a desire for it. And I've been clean for like 2 months now, maybe even a little bit more. And not once have I had a desire for it. And people will know that are smoking weed or have smoked it in the past a lot, that it becomes an addiction. The feeling becomes an addiction. People will say the actual drug isn't psychoactive, it's not addictive. But you're just lying to yourself. It's as simple as that. I would always tell myself, it helps in my creativity, it helps to loosen me up, and I'd just be lying to myself about things. When you really think about it and really think about how you used to be and actually truly analyze yourself, you realize how much it's destroying you. And true the word, like Jesus helped me with that. Like, I don't know how else to explain it. I've read other testimonies and this is exactly what they're saying. This is just how I felt. I just felt more like full when I accepted Jesus into my heart. Like, just genuinely, I didn't have to do anything, really. It's not like something I never understood is, people go through life and they're saying like, oh, I'll be in God's good graces when I help this amount of people, or when I do this, or I've done more good work than you, so God loves me more than you, and like, that's so wrong. That's not the point. Like, we're saved by God's grace, which means that He didn't have to save us. Like, and really, in all honesty, He probably shouldn't have. Like, we came down, He made us, and then we defied His orders. And then, especially in this day and age, we just constantly, we don't even believe He exists. Give Him no credit whatsoever. And then a lot of people that do understand He's real, and I still do it all the time, sin and do things that we weren't designed to do, that it hurts Him every time. And like the Bible, it explains that we're inscribed on the palm of His hand, and that every one of our hairs is numbered, which still just trips me out beyond comprehension. Like, I didn't really think anyone cared about me. Like, to be honest. Like, I don't know. Like, as you can probably tell from my childhood, and there was a lot of other stuff that happened. I don't know, I just didn't really feel wanted. Like, I had friends, but they'd always come and go. Like, especially in the hard times. And I just felt so alone. And when I accepted Jesus into my heart, I just felt full. I don't know how else to explain it. I just felt like it just felt nice. And I mean, this is something that is just really hard for me to explain, and people that have been through it will know exactly what I mean. Because I didn't have a miracle, like I said, I didn't have a miracle that, saved my life, or a crazy story like that or anything like that. I'm just a real dude that realized that things didn't add up. And I realized I needed help. That I couldn't do this life alone. That I got to stop lying to myself and realize that I'm broken. I went down the self-help road years ago and read countless books. You know what I mean? Like, you start with the financial ones like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and all the like 12 Rules for Life with Jordan Peterson, read that a few times. David Goggins, Can't Hurt Me. There's Aubrey Marcus, and everyone watches Joe Rogan as well. And there's just heaps of books and stuff that I read, and podcasts, and all this self-help stuff, and it just doesn't get you anywhere. Like, it gets you stuff in the short term, and you can lie to yourself and say that you're happy when no one's watching, but are you really? Or do you just become better at showing your lies to other people? Like, the materialistic things in this world are fading, and I don't know, I guess I'm fortunate in that sense, that when I grew up, I never, like, my mom never taught us, she taught us not to care about materialistic things, and not even in the godly sense, but just in the sense that it doesn't really matter. Like, for example, status and power and stuff, it doesn't make you any better than another person. Like, just because someone has $1 million, or for example, me, like, I've got a few thousand or whatever I have, just because someone living in Africa or someone living in Kenya or wherever, like, same thing, but living wherever, in like a third world country, and they have hardly anything, how am I more of a human being than them? Because I have more materialistic things? That makes zero sense to me. And I also realized that this whole world is just made up of other people. Besides me, like, I'm very small and very... How am I to... It's just pride. If I'm to say I'm better than someone else, it's just pride. And so I'm very fortunate in that sense. I've never really been caught up in the materialistic things. Obviously, I have at points. Like, you get a new car and you feel awesome, or you get a new whatever and you feel like a boss. You know what I mean? Like, I get my new snowboard and stuff, and I'd be like, damn straight, I'm the boss. You don't have one. Have my own gear. You feel like a shredder, but it doesn't make you any happier. Just lying to yourself. I was lying to myself. And I guess that's where the last point I want to touch on is this new age stuff. That's because people are starting to realize what's happening in the world. People are starting to realize, that it's not as it seems. There's something else going on. That there's all this stuff happening in the shadows that you don't hear about. And people are starting to realize that the news lies to you. And that, all this pedophilia and stuff is the main one, save our children. As I'm recording this, that's the biggest thing that people are starting to wake up to. And people are realizing that this stuff it's happening. And it's bad. And I guess I just want to give a warning out to people to actually look into the truth of it all. Don't just take people's word. And me too, don't just take my word for what it is. You know what I mean? Actually check into stuff. Because the truth of the matter is, Jesus is real. And that there's a spiritual realm that are constantly fighting angels and demons. Constantly. And Lucifer, the devil, is real. And he's not going to come back as some tyrannical ruler that is going to force everyone to take his mark or force everyone to, because that doesn't work. Like, everyone knows the story of Adam and Eve and how Eve was tricked. Simple as that. She was tricked. She wasn't forced to eat the apple. It didn't have the serpent, who was Satan, didn't have the serpent being like, eat this right now or I'll kill you, or you're forced to eat this. No. Straight up, she was tricked. And then from there, her prideful nature came in. Like when she gave it to Adam, then his prideful nature came in when God said, what have you done? And he was like, oh, it wasn't me, it was the woman. And then the woman was like, Eve was like, it wasn't me, it was the serpent. And it became this blame game of blaming other people for what you do. And when you blame other people, you take control. The control is taken out of your hands and given to someone else. And your life, the control of your life and the control of your actions are given to someone else. Like, we can't choose what happens to us, but we can choose how we respond to it. And this new age stuff that is being pushed with a lot of this truth I truly believe, is going to be the fall of man. It's going to be what destroys us, because it's prideful. It believes that we can be our own gods, that we don't need help. Like, when that's just not true. If you really ask yourself, and a lot of people won't get this, and like I said, if this can help even just one person, then I'm more than happy. You know what I mean? Like, that's the goal, isn't it? Planting seeds. Like, I can't force you to be any way. And no one could have forced me to be how I am now. No human anyway. There's no way. I was so prideful in my own sense, and I didn't even want to hear any of this. Like, you think someone really who loved Jesus, and even if they were the smartest of smartest people and knew every fact and, could spit it down my throat, which there are people out there that can. Like, do you really think I would have listened? And I really would have taken it in? So how am I to sit here and be like, you have to believe this? You have to buy into all this stuff that I'm believing in? Because it's not going to work. That's not the point. You know what I mean? The point is, we've got to realize that we need help in our own self and stop lying to ourselves. This is just speaking from what I've been through and what I'm going through constantly. Like, I'm not sitting here perfect. There's no way. I'm never going to be perfect with my own understanding. Only through Christ living in me can I, even then, like, my flesh and body will never be perfect. And it's a constant daily battle. Like, I wake up with just sinful desires on my mind, looking at women being like, damn son, you know what I mean? Like, just straight out. Like, and that's what I struggle with constantly. And I don't know, especially if it's my own understanding, I'm never going to be able to, that's never going to stop. You know what I mean? And I just want to warn everyone about these new age teachings and how we are the saviors of our own mankind, because things are going to ramp up. Like, for everyone thinking that 2020 is just an off year and things are going to go back to normal or however they were, they're not. Like, things are going to get worse. And then things are going to seem like they're getting better, but it's just so you don't see the truth. Don't be fooled. And that's just a warning, because there's so much false being pushed with more truth to fool people. And I don't know, that's a different box of worms that I'm not going to open at this point, but just remember that Lucifer, the devil, disguises himself as the angel of light. Don't be fooled by the fake dark to light movement, by a few Bible scriptures, and know that Jesus is the one and only Savior of mankind. And in the end, every single knee will bow to him and confess that he's Lord. Everyone. And I just, yeah, God bless.